I'm Mr. Zansky, and this is a speedrun of Practice Test 4, the second module, the B module, the easier one. Hopefully this time a little bit louder and a little bit bigger. I'm going to head for the first conventions question, going straight to 14 and clicking through. I land on 17. Woof! We don't have many of these, but that's perfectly okay. I'm in the convention section. I'm going to engage with the bread and butter strategy. I immediately identify that I've got a neither. I look to the text for an and I don't see one. Our vibes are going to be, I need some sort of verb to tell me when, because here, right here, is my beautiful subject. Pick and move on. Back to the conventions questions. I see a little dashy poo, immediately engaging those steps. I look in the text for another dash. I don't see one, and neither should you. Therefore, in step 3, we can eliminate both of these guys. Then I consider what I want. I know that this preposition needs to be attached to its object, so get that comma out of here. I see verbs again in this conventions question, so I consider number. I've got a singular, I've got a neither, so I can go right to the text and start considering if it's parallel structure. There isn't an and, therefore forming a clause. Colon needs a complete sentence to the left. I have no verb that tells me when, therefore I need one. A is my only option. Another verb one. Kind of a gift with these questions. I've got a singular studies, a singular has been, a both will study, and a singular was studying. So I probably have a shift in verb tense. As I run through when, I've got a present, I've got a future, and I've got a past. Remember, we ignore aspect in layer 1. I go looking for some sort of clue about when. As I read about good old Bonnie doing what she did, I've got this verb that is telling me when, and it's in the past, and that's a beautiful thing. So I'll just pick the past and move on with my life. Multiple ways to cut this conventions question up. Omega consideration has been triggered. One accessible thing is looking within. I know that I'm not going to possess a preposition. So I can eliminate A because it's saying that stories is possessing of. This is saying that stories is possessing of, and both of those things. Oh, geez. D is saying that stories is possessing of, and all of that's trash. So I've got stories of South Asian immigrants, and this is a beautiful choice. Moving on, I am in the convention section still. We dig that. I see that this is going to be some sort of punctuation question, so I move on to step 2. I see a semicolon, so I go looking to see if there's another semicolon in the sentence. There isn't one, therefore, these two are going to be equal since there isn't a complex list. Then I'm stuck between a colon. With a colon, I'm going to consider if I have a complete sentence over here, and I so totally do, but I'm going to look for if the right side exemplifies the left side. I've got this rocky fish over here, and I've got this calico rocky fish. These are different fishes as described by this italic nonsense here. So I'm not exemplifying the right with the left because these are two different fishies. Therefore, I'm just going to live in some contrast. I've got pronouns here, and even though they're not verbs where we're going to bias odd men out, we are going to consider number. I've got singular, I've got plural, and I've got singular. So I'm going to look for the antecedent. Who or what am I referring to? We've got a sea turtle shell here, but that doesn't seem to be what we're referring to. We've got a they right here. They is referring again back to the barnacles. I'm going to plug in barnacles here to see if it makes sense. The barnacles can dissolve the cement like secretions. The barnacles used to attach the barnacles to a sea turtle shell. So I know I want to be plural, so A and D fall. Then this thing is bouncing itself back to the subject, and that's the function of a reflexive or intensive pronoun. Onto our transition questions, I go reading, and I've got this information that these things bond with atoms. So that seems to be like an important context clue. Then on the right side of this, I've got that spiders are able to cling. This relationship seems very cause and effecty. Because these things bond with atoms, spiders can cling. Cause and effect, as I go looking, as a result, matches my signal element, is the signal element that matches my context clues. As I engage with the second transition question, I see this detail that this volcano measures a certain speed. Then as I move forward, that it's long considered to be the largest. Very important. Is this one. Then I read the next sentence and I see a little bit of yap, and then I've got this different volcano that seems to be even bigger. These are different volcanoes, and I can start engaging with this. So it's not cause and effect because the first thing is different. I absolutely love this contrast that's present here. While nerds long believed this one was big, turns out the other one the other one was bigger, is going to be my template that I can apply to this one. Moreover, sure, this is not this, but there's no overarching idea that we have. Move on. This is a speed run, not a walkthrough. I've got another transition question, which is pretty cool, I guess. I read the previous statement and I grab some sort of context clues. I'm going to go with the main clause here. It had a mild taste and inspired a sense of calm. I've got researchers knowing that the dishes were sometimes named after theorized the dish's name, and I see unwinding, right? This colon could help if you're further confused. All of these context clues are. I know that I'm dealing with a sameness between these things. So it's not going to be alternatively and there's no contrast. So whether it's cause and effect or this thing is not thing supporting an overarching thing, I think I'm going to land on my cause and effect for this one because it made them calm with mild taste. We can drop that part because it doesn't seem to matter because it made them calm. It must be the calmy calms. The clam, the calm. Did it again. Therefore, move on. Provide an explanation and an example in this notes question. A little bit tricky when it's asking for two things, an explanation and an example of this thing. I'm going to look for an example first because I find that to be a potential obvious thing for me. We've got this term which is used by and how it's derived or what's joined it, but that's not an example of it. This falls. In this one, as I read it, I see a bunch of stuff. I don't have an example. Oh, but I like a colon pops out to me that we're going to exemplify something, and we've got this plant-animal hybrids, right? That seems heckin' exemplary. So we'll put our cursor on him and bias him for now. This person created a piece, refers to the subject of his paintings as this thing, but I don't really think that I have an example here, right? I have a piece, but that's not an example of the term, just something that might be within it. I murder him, and I read this. We've got the same thing, that these two things are present with this thing, and again, we don't have an example. My bias for B shows that whatever yapping and coping I do to select C, D would lead me there, but B is pretty darn gorgeous. We will eliminate these, skip to the next, go to the start, and start engaging with our vocabulary questions. I see this participle here that is going to be a signal element. They expect to see positivity more than double. I go looking, expect to see someone analysts believe, predicted seems to be a match. Expected, expecting to see. Yeah, absolutely. As I go on to the next question, I see an immediate signal element of this on this other hand. I can move it to its spot, start to see the relationship that's expressed. So I'll go looking to the previous sentence. I see insect damage as the context clue that that signal element led me to. Bad, bad, bad. Insect damage leads to this. On the other hand, a not damaged plant, and I go looking for a synonym. Beneficial isn't not damaged, it just means healthy. Move on to the next question. In the immediate thing, I just see a context clue is groundbreaking, colon or semicolon, so I'll read past it. This recognition links itself to the groundbreaking. We've got the recognition. We're living in a land of positivity. So other researchers regularly acknowledged her greatness. I like that, and I think it's beautiful. As I read this one, I see a while, which can mean contrast or concurrent action. So I can go looking to the left. I've got a council that's generating laws, blah, 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 blah. While, so it could have meant contrast, but it could just mean concurrent thing. These laws by devising policy in accordance with them, right? These participles can kick me forward in conjunction with the signal element here to land on this accordance. Everybody is working together. They're not mimicking, they're not improvising, they're doing something with them. Implementing. Another vocab question, geez Louise. As I skim over all of this, I don't see any obvious signal elements here in the next sentence. I've got an and. Okay, we're starting to engage now. We've got photographed as a context clue, bouncing around the signal element and working with layered. This shows that this person was in the creation process of this, and what a free little find for question 5 with creation. Another vocabulary question. They keep going. Another one. In this, we have a study showing that something happened, but I don't have any signal elements or context clues, so I have to keep reading. They found something, but that's not going to be very significant. About to witness, help I become more likely to offer help to someone else, and in doing so, I love this as a final signal element that leads us still inspire others, and I feel like I have enough. Can Help prosocial behavior, and foster is the word that does that for me. In this, underlined sentence question. I'm going to fight my fight first here. Female cuckoos have been seen quickly laying eggs in the nest of other bird species. Man, they be wilding out there on the streets. It introduces a physical feature of them. I don't know how they look. I know like what they're doing. This falls. It describes the appearance of the nest. Once again, I don't know how something looks. I just know what it does. It offers a detail about I immediately love this how. Carry out the behavior. I love it. And then finally for D, it explains how they react to it. I don't know how they react to it. It's not there. For this one, it's an easy question just because I can live and fight my fight right here, engage with this, move on to question 7, a main purpose. In all of this, I'm going to just go for this paragraph here. Usually I like starting with main ideas at the end, but if I have to, I'll read more. As I read this, I see a signal element and yet, which is huge. Vacuous is the and, but it's mostly the yet. He was secretly proud of his acquisition. Dignity pops out at me as another signal element. He's scowling. What a classic old dude. I'm just going to try to go for it on this main purpose because maybe something here could confuse me. Conflicting feelings about the new picture seems pretty good, right? The and yet, this engages with my signal element. Proud of his acquisition, with hidden dignity with his scowling. There, like, completes that picture. I like this. B saying something about resentment for a person. This doesn't engage with the person at all. As I skim through here, we just got the notion of a dude, but nothing that seems to be negative. Take him off the table. Describes the items that the shop owner most highly prizes. Nope, it doesn't engage with my signal element. We end off on this note that he has like this little taboo love for whatever this weird thing is that he found or that he acquired. C falls. Explains the difference between the new picture and other pictures. I would look for signal elements of contrast, but the contrast that's present isn't in the materials, but in his feelings. Moving on, text 2 responds to text 1, so I'm going to engage immediately with text 2. When I read this, I've got my first sentence, painting programs are complicated. It seems to be what he's expressing. I move on to the second sentence. Oh, in addition, in addy to regular art stuff, tech knowledge needed. All right. Many artists will start by doing this. Many artists don't, right? They develop from the basic form. It seems to be, or basic might imply something bad, but he's just saying they benefit from that, where they can apply a variety of colors, form, needing fewer tools. Right? Fewer tools. That's it, right? That's my summary of this guy's stuff. Now I'm going into text 1. I understand this, and I'm ready to clap back at some claims, outlandish claims made in text 1. Digital art, the use of digital art isn't really art at all. Ooh, spicy. I know that this is the initial claim. I'm going to immediately go for the shots fired to our Dreyfus kids in digital. Text 1 hates you, but I love you, so everything's fine. By arguing that a piece of creativity can still be displayed traditionally. No, this guy's argument is that digital art is poopy. That falls. By explaining that it's actually much harder to use a tablet. No, he doesn't say that it's harder. The skills seem to compound on each other and that they require different things. That's not what text 2 would say. Didn't make its way into my summary. Would text 2 say that digital art requires artistic abilities and skills even if it employs less traditional tool? I love this. Absolutely. Is this going to be it, right? He doesn't throw shade on any of these things. He just makes that there are a possible advantage, fewer tools. Let's see if D is anything that we might like. We've got a ton of time on the board. By admitting that most digital artists don't think that fundamental, no, they use those things. Absolutely not. C is the right answer. A little Charterino, looking beautiful. I go to the final sentence. It says that in 2016, California had some stuff, and let's just try to eliminate some liars here. Washington had between 600 and 800. Washington is here, 600 and 800. That seems to be chill. New York had fewer than 800. No, that's a liar. Wisconsin and Iowa each, we'll start with Wisconsin, each had between 12 and 14. That seems to be right. But now Iowa, where are you? Iowa's right here. No, absolutely a liar. Pennsylvania had more than 1,200 organic farms. Pennsylvania, that's absolutely a liar. Let's make sure there's nothing inverted here because that was easy peasy. 2016, there's no signal element that bounces me back. Yeah, I'm just presenting a fact. Easy. Out of the graphs. What is my claim? I want to support my claim. We want him to be a hard worker, fully dedicated to his job as the water boy, right? I've seen this Adam Sandler movie. When I read A, very happy would jog home. This is excitement being outside of work. And if he's anything like me, our dedication is that outside of work, we love this thing. We don't celebrate having money from the job. When I read B, trying to support this hardworking, being dedicated, to halt traffic, this is before he gets to work. This has nothing to do with this concept. When I read C, from early morn to the fall of the afternoon, he would go from fountain to fountain. This is pretty good, right? This shows a duration of time that he's working hard. His lean body's so accustomed. Ooh, this for dedicated is gorgeous that he never. This is the right answer, absolutely. But I'll check this. When his first drugs had worn out, the sweets under forced clay, he had time to. This just shows that he's a weirdo with a weird obsession with these things, maybe even stealing things from his job. This doesn't really match what we're looking for here. We want to illustrate a claim. Our claim seems to be that he describes an element of nature as an active participant. That's what I'm going to look for first. Uh, Through the water, the moon writes her legends. Oof, that's pretty gorgeous, right? Writing it right on the sand. That's a gorgeous notion of active participant. Writes is such an active verb. Softly the water ripples against the canoe. That seems to receive an action. I don't call that an active participant. We've got snow white petals which drop from an overblown rose. Once again, this is an active participant. Someone did something to this rose and something happened. But in the moon, her wayward beauty is ever and always the same. The moon is pretty. I like this from being maybe participant, but it's so static with this is ever and always the same. A nighttime scene on a body of water. Yeah, A and D are both pretty chill, but the rights is just so much better than the staying the same that's there, right? Move forward. Okay, we are jumping back to a graph question here. 4 questions to go, 15 minutes, easy peasy. We've got plants. They claim that plants go in proximity to an advantage of the, this seems to be something important, but I'm going to go right for my numbers to kill any liars. Hopefully I can get out of here pretty quickly. For all 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 species, less than 75% of juvenile plants, these seem to be my percentages, were growing in patches of vegetation. These are all less than 75, so we'll select him for now. Next one, the species with the greatest number of juvenile plants growing in patches of vegetation is this one, and that's not true. That's a liar. For T, this one, and the modern one, so both these top numbers, the percentage of juvenile plants growing in patches was less than what would be expected if plants were randomly distributed. I have no idea what this randomly distributed is coming into play. I read this final sentence and I have no idea what it's talking about. I'm going to skim the text though for this notion of random distribution, just because it seems out of left field. None of my axes, my title doesn't talk about it. Skimming. Ooh, there's the ticket. I'm going to slow down and read this sentence. If only about 15% would be other plants. Okay, so given this fact, this is attaching to the text here because this notion came out of nowhere. And I didn't want to throw them out per se. I skimmed for this notion. The percentage of juvenile plants growing in patches with vegetation is less. No, these are far more, right? 15 for liar. Then when I read this one, the percentage of juvenile plants growing in patches of vegetation substantially higher than would it be. So is this does seem substantially higher than 15, right? It's like 4 times or 3 times the amount plus some. So I'm comparing A and D now. I'm going back to the text to see what I want here. And what's cool about this one is 2 talked about random distribution. So sometimes things are talked about that aren't there, but we'll just keep cruising. Based on plants that come that plant species that go close, we get an advantage. We want the comparative advantage is what we're trying to express. And D is absolutely gorgeous for that. This statement, less than 75%, is just trash. It doesn't show that there is an advantage. Additionally, by saying 75, the number theoretically could be anything. But this one gives me everything that I want. This substantially higher maps onto gaining an advantage if, right, the language of this is just so spot on and gorgeous. Disgusting. Another claim question, and these look so long and chunky. That's okay. We only have 2 questions left, 3 questions left. We could spend 4 minutes per question, but it's not going to take that long. I read the claim, explores the value of literature. Literature does matter, arguing that society's spiritual well-being depends on the character of its literary culture, right? Huge claim. So literature matters for the health of a nation, right? The health of a society. Let's read. Poetry, which is literature, brings together or separates, which fortifies or brings anguish, which shores up or demolishes soldiers, gives men. We've got all of these examples of like, I guess could be a society's character. So I love is more necessary to people than industry itself, for industry provides the means of subsistence, but literature gives them the desire and strength for life. I love this one, right? I know this is the answer right here. I want the focus on literature. Spiritual well-being is all of this nonsense here, and the character of its literary culture. It's right here, everything. But I know it's a speed run, but I'll just peek the other ones just to be disciplined because I am on a heater of a test right now and I don't want to miss anything. Every society brings literature, okay, to its own form of expression, and the history of the nation can be told. No, this isn't that literature informs. This is missing this plot, right? We want to prove that society's well-being depends on the character, but this is just saying like we can map things through it. It loses the gravitas of the depends. Never lose your depends, you can make messes. Where will a race of men go when they have lost the habit of thinking? Geez, with race and scope of their action. This loses the focus of literature. Listening to the song, this talks about literature. Song this hardworking stuff. This does. Listen to what exercise. No, if anything, this is too narrow. Too narrow of a focus. I love this A. Moving on. Logically completes the text. Our final two. Go to my final sentence. It's saying as a result. I can set up my because template immediately because the previous sentence is going to give me something. Because the method was gangsta good. It was good. More crops. Because more crops from the method. What? That's how I'm going to summarize this sentence. Because more crops from the method. More crops than needed from the method. What? Right? This is engaging a summary, and I feel so comfortable with this concept that I'm going to start looking back. I recognize that that is a signal element that could kick me back, but sometimes you can get kicked back and be confused. So I keep grinding. Because more crops than needed from the method, harvested crops only on the hottest day. Harvested crops only on, there's nothing about temperature here. Found ways to shield the crops from the sun. No, they had more than they needed. They can let some die. Did not begin, I don't know if this date's coming from, because they had more crops than they needed, they were able to store crops for later use. I love that. As I explore backward to make sure everything's fine, I could see why other details had been distracting, but I don't agree with any of these things. Yeah, these would be kicking you back to previous details. Speedrun, keep going. Logically completes the text. Do the exact same thing. We want to receive a reward consequently. So because the previous thing this, we love when these templates come up. So because X, what's my X? They also found. Oh, we have two. So for this one, I'm going to kick it back one more. That's an addition thing. So two things are going to be involved in the consequently. So because the team discovered that because fan cells, these things found there, are mandatory for new associations, new associative memories, new associations, we'll say. Because fan cells need that dopamine. They need that dopamine, a chemical that the brain produces in response to pleasure, and because they rely on each other. Receiving a reward should likely help. Because fan cells are mandatory for new association, and fan cells need dopamine, a chemical that receiving a reward. So I would imagine receiving a reward gives more dopamine. So I would anticipate from this that fan cells are popping off. That's what I'm looking for. I feel very comfortable with this summary, so I'm going to start looking at my items. Decrease an individual's capacity to utilize? No. This is all positivity. This is some weird negativity being introduced. Increase in individual capacity to recognize differences. We do see an improvement, right? Fan cells are popping off. I will leave B on the table. Increase in individual capacity. This is positive as well. Both of these align, and I really love C because my language is like new associations. When I look back to what the text is saying, because I was just doing a brief summary, I've got the acquisition of new associative memories. This is just right here. I've literally got the word are necessary for the acquisition, the forming of associative memories, and it says it. In my original reading, I thought maybe I was summarizing associative memories wrong because I didn't read the first few sentences, and that's why this was tempting. But I just know the only difference is this seems to be making something up about what associative memories are, which is just what the text says. We'll check D. Decrease. No, we've got all positivity, and there it seems to be finished. 27. We're done here, boys. GG.